That was an insight into how, when we're thinking about urban design for mental health, we're not just thinking about people who have mental illness. We're thinking about people who have risk of developing mental health problems, and that is everyone. And things like being isolated, not being able to move around your city, is the sort of thing that can lead to loneliness, isolation, marginalization, and that sort of thing can cause mental health problems. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to tell you a bit about the research that I have just been doing in Hong Kong. This is a case study. This is a new urban design and mental health initiative. We've done one in Tokyo. Hong Kong is our second city, and there's now 14 cities that are just about to start doing this, interviewing all sorts of interesting people who care about the city to hear more with a focus on sort of the professional planners and architects, etc. To get a feel for what the challenges and opportunities are in each city and what other cities can learn from each other. Here is the main gist of what people said. There's a lack of privacy. You're surrounded by people all the time, and it's not easy to escape. I'm assuming by the chuckles that some people can relate to this. In terms of the particular factors that I discussed before that have impact on mental health, let's have a quick look. This is a whistle-stop tour. The whole thing will be published on our website in February. In terms of green places, country parks, when you go, are beautiful, we just don't have time. This was something I heard a lot. Country parks are an extremely valuable resource, and they can absolutely improve our mental health. But in order to get those benefits, you kind of have to be there. And some people are not able to access country parks every day for various reasons, which means that there's a lot of importance in thinking about urban greenery, the things that people are seeing every day in addition to those country parks. And there's lots of people who are frustrated that there's not enough urban greenery, but actually what started to emerge was that maybe the urban greenery is a bit too perfect. Here's somebody saying, we expect perfection. They're anime trees, arguing that we're trying to get things that don't change with the seasons, that don't shed their leaves, that don't have different textures and complexity, that don't have different types of trees. And that sort of thing, you know, it sort of implies that things are there for attractiveness, they're there for decoration, but what that sort of thing is doing is it's not tapping into those mental health benefits that come through biophilia. And all the theories of that are around looking at complexity and looking at a wide variety of colours and crisscrossing things and getting away from the urban straight lines and corners and block colours. So that's something to think about. Active place. People are always complaining about walking because streets are hot and polluted. It's hard to even go for a walk comfortably. But at the same time, people are walking a lot in Hong Kong, and that is mostly because of the great MTR system. And people are relying on public transport, so they have to walk, and we've got these great walkways. I mean, it's true that it could be a 5 to 10 minute walk from a train to an exit. That sort of sprint down that Hong Kong station to Central Station march always makes me feel quite exhausted by the end of it, to be honest. It's a bit humiliating. But yeah, the fact that we've got this really great infrastructure that focuses on public transport, and then if you depend on public transport, it means you have to be able to get from there to your destination, which is why Hong Kong has done all sorts of innovative things, like with walkways. I mean, somebody here is saying they're nice because you don't have to walk next to cars, but you get traffic fumes. Sure, but you get less traffic fumes than potentially if you're walking next to the cars. And this sort of walkways are enabling people to get around this excessive car infrastructure that we see in all sorts of cities. Biking is really interesting. Recreation, not a form of transportation. In most global cities, biking is seen as one key to increase active transport and get people to be doing daily physical exercise, just integrating it into their commute. But here that's not possible, according to what I've read and heard from a variety of reasons that are mostly to do with safety. Lots of cars, very narrow streets, no space to put bike lanes. So, you know, it's just something to think about. Pro-social space, designing things to encourage positive social interaction, was a thing that a lot of people felt frustrated about here. There's less design, facilitating street life. All the strategies move people into the shopping malls. And lots of people raised various points about how spaces in Hong Kong are not necessarily designed for conversation. In terms of the design of things, here's a here's people talking about places are minimal, easy to maintain landscapes. There's lots of frustration that design is for ease rather than for benefit, and that there's a lot of opportunity to innovate in the design of existing public spaces to make them better for people. And this question of they all look the same, that there's very vigorous regulations over what different spaces should look like, and that has led to people feeling that wherever they look in Hong Kong, it sort of feels like they could be anywhere in certain areas. Lots of people talk about this sort of thing. Hong Kong people don't know how to use outdoor public space. But you know, there's some groups, of course, that do. Older people know how to use it for exercise. That's taken about 10 meters from here. Domestic workers are using space for, as I say here, really joyful, innovative use of space. They're able to socialize in ways that helps reduce their loneliness and isolation. And while there's challenges with that, as we all know, at the same time, they're using space in a way that's really positive for their mental health. Very quickly, there'll be more details, of course, in this upcoming publication. What are the key recommendations? More natural urban nature and public space, including thinking about how to design public spaces, investing a bit more in making them more diverse and relevant for their users. We're all working extremely long hours. Hong Kong is got some of the longest working hours in the world. So actually, if we're going to try and target people, we need to target them to and from and during work. So we can think more about the commute, how to make it less stressful, how to make it shorter, how to ensure there's good things happening at lunchtime, like going outside and seeing nature, doing some exercise. Yeah, I don't know what I was going to say there. Oh, I do know what I was going to say. And Hong Kong doesn't really do much in the way of flexible working and working from home, but I guess that there's a case for saying, does every single person in Hong Kong need to come to Central every morning? And could there be more flexibility that could reduce some of these challenges? Homes is a huge issue, of course it is, in terms of affordability, in terms of availability, but also there's lots of chat about how can we make homes more social. Neighbours increasingly not knowing each other, people feeling isolated, lots of the public space being taken out of the public domain. But actually there are increasing thinking, particularly in public housing projects, about how we can make more communal spaces, try and encourage more neighbourly interaction. And we'll hear more about that later tonight. Reduce the car domination, absolutely. There's a lot of car infrastructure. Could it temporarily or permanently be used for people in terms of walking and biking? Designing these sitting out areas better, as I briefly alluded to, but also with people being, their decision making being informed by temperature. We need to think as well about, should we be thinking about how to design sitting in areas in air-conditioned spaces? At the moment, are we just going to malls to shop? Is there a good use of indoor space that people should be thinking about in terms of placemaking? People need to be able to collaborate more. Lots of people were frustrated that it's actually really hard to set up collaborations between planners and health and other specialties. Inclusive planning doesn't seem like it happens as often as it could, which is a challenge in every city, of course. But there's two main benefits. One is that just by getting people involved in planning, you're already helping their mental health because you're empowering them, you're building their self-esteem, and you're helping them interact with their neighbours and give them ownership over the end result. And then, of course, the second benefit is that they might actually tell you something useful that you can then use to make the space better. And the final recommendation is that many people have a perception that money is what talks in all decision making. And I guess that there's a question for how can we think about how to bring health into the priority discussion when making planning and design decisions. I've got 3 recommendations from Hong Kong for others. First is this great infrastructure, I've called it first mile, last mile infrastructure, getting people from public transport to their destinations without needing cars. Social infrastructure, I just criticised these sitting out spaces for their design, but actually, like, the concept of sitting out spaces is really good, and if they could be improved a bit, they'd be amazing. So other cities could be thinking about that. And then the third one is creative public space sharing. We have a very dense city. There's not much public space, so maybe we need to think a bit more about how private space can be at times for other purposes. So those are my recommendations from the research that I've just done. But of course it's not the whole story. I've only been here briefly. We're now going to hear, well, it's now 4 talks for 5 minutes because we just heard one. So I will scooch past Paul Zimmerman, and then we've got a great talk coming up here with Ian